Hey everyone, welcome back. So today's video is going to be something a little bit different here. And I want to just start it off by throwing out what may be a very challenging question for you, just to kind of, stir the juices a little bit, get you kind of stewing in thought, and then I'll unpack it for you a little bit later in the video here. And the question is this: what if you're not broken? What if you work perfectly well, even with whatever it is you're struggling with, whatever, issues and symptoms and challenges and mental health struggles you might be dealing with? What if you work perfectly well and you are not broken? How would that change how you understand yourself and how you understand the problem that you've been dealing with? So that's the question I'm putting out there. That might be a little upsetting for some of you, but hear me out in this video. By the end of the video, it should make a lot more sense here. So today's video is something a little bit different. I decided kind of spontaneously here to shoot a different kind of video here for you that is bringing some of my NLP education more to the forefront here. So we'll be talking more conceptually here, and we'll be talking kind of unpacking what I think is an important kind of mindset that you want to know when you're working with yourself. So for full context, the way I've been thinking about it, generally speaking, the pattern lately has been that I'm doing kind of these wide shot, horizontal shot videos that are on kind of larger topics or more crucial psychedelic fundamentals on Mondays, Fridays, and then midweek I've been doing the kind of vertical shot, shorter videos where I'm unpacking or encouraging or kind of giving you a booster shot of some sort of mindset or an optimistic attitude, something like that, to help you kind of stay on your path and keep working on this and keep healing yourself. Today's video is going to be different in that I decided instead what we would do is we would kind of do a longer form unpacking. So this is an optimistic, uplifting, positive video message here. And I'm also going to teach you a little bit about one of the crucial, I think, most useful mindsets from NLP that you can use to work with yourself. And we're going to unpack it more long form. So this is uplifting, but long form and a little more abstract. And we're talking about a different topic here, which is how you can use one of the core ideas from neuro-linguistic programming to further your own self-healing path. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about it, unpack it, and see how you can apply it. And really quick, before we go ahead and talk about the 3 points that I want to convey to you guys here today, I just want to give you a little bit of context about this idea and where it's coming from so that you understand more clearly kind of the context around this idea I want to present to you, and that you understand that it's not just me kind of making up shit to say on the internet to make, to fill up content or whatever. I don't know why I would make stuff up, but people do. So, the context around this idea is, first of all, that this is what's considered one of the presuppositions of NLP. So in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, they start with a set of what are considered presuppositions. So the term presupposition means something that is before supposed or assumed or understood. So the way NLP works, we generally think of subjective experience as being the primary thing that human beings are dealing with. So the question in NLP is, what is the structure of a person's subjective experience in any given moment? And it's really this approach to recognizing subjectivity as being primary for every human being, and to really exploring and unpacking subjectivity that creates so much of the effective leverage and power and rapid transformation that NLP is known for when it works. So with that being said, part of what creates that, in NLP, we are starting from these presuppositions. These are assumptions that we have found to be really useful and functionally helpful in terms of getting a result. We don't think of them in terms of hard truth, like this is fact, this is not fact, because generally speaking, when it comes to subjectivity, it becomes really hard to measure what is fact and what is true and what isn't with the internal subjective realm of the human being's experience, which is totally the domain that NLP really deals with, if we're going to be honest here. So These presuppositions are the starting points that, as an NLP practitioner, we begin with to engage the client with as kind of a mindset or a filter that helps us sort for what's going on with the person in a way that helps us get them to the end result faster. That makes sense. So there are a whole list of presuppositions. It depends on where you look it up. You'll see different amounts on different lists, but there's kind of a common kind of core there. And this is amongst the common core of presuppositions. And my experience with this presupposition, which I'm kind of stretching out, not naming, but I'll name here in just a moment. My experience of these presuppositions in general, rather, is that they're profound pieces of understanding into, what it is to be a human being, what it is to understand and work with the slipperiness of mind, work with the slipperiness of our own psychology. The presuppositions of NLP are about as good of distinctions in terms of personal development work as I've ever found. And, I'm a nerd for psychology and I study, personal growth, and I have for decades. I know all kinds of different distinctions from Tony Robbins, from Landmark, from wherever. In my experience, the distinctions that come from the presuppositions of NLP are incredibly, incredibly helpful and useful. Generally speaking, when people are taking NLP trainings, they're learning how to use these to work with other people, whether they're wanting to be coaches or whether they're wanting to be therapists or whether they're wanting to be, just a public speaker or an inspirational person. So a lot of times these are being applied in different ways, but for self-therapy, for working with yourself, these are golden. So, okay, enough rambling on. Let's go ahead and unpack this presupposition and the kind of different ways that you can think about it. Okay, so the presupposition that we're working from today that I would love for you to just kind of open your mind to and consider and explore is the following. Human beings are never broken. There's no such thing as a broken human being. And there is no wrong way to work. There's no wrong way that you are wired up. All there is understanding how you're wired up and what result that gets. So I want you to just think about that for a moment. I'd love for you to just consider. So this is point number one I want to put out here for you. Think about what it means to view yourself in this lens of I'm not broken. That even with the problems I'm dealing with, whether that's depression or anxiety or PTSD issues or whatever it is you might be struggling with, think about what it means, how it casts your relationship to the problem when you consider I'm not broken. That this isn't wrong per se. It's just that your brain has been wired up in a certain way, right? And all there is to do is to really, understand that better and to relate to it in a way of approaching it from understanding rather than pathology. When it comes to mental health, we tend to like to think and in these kind of mechanistic, pathological, kind of quasi-medical conceptions and approaches, right? So we think of ourselves as, I'm either mentally ill or mentally healthy, right? Kind of a binary there too. We tend to think of ourselves in terms of, I'm broken, or there are broken people, and then there are healthy, robust, fixed, intact people. And that's, I think, a deep misconception, of mind, because mind isn't a physical, linear, mechanistic thing. Mind is software, is a better metaphor. Mind isn't hardware. Mind is software. Mind is a set of programs running and interacting. Mind is a complex system with inputs that create outputs for you, right? And so the question is, okay, if my mind is a complex set of, systems interacting that, has a certain set of inputs that creates the output of the problem that I'm dealing with. What are the inputs, A? B, what's happening inside of this system that's creating the effect at the output stage of my problem that I'm dealing with. Does this make sense? I hope it makes sense. For me, there's so much that happens when we become curious about the processes that our mind is running through, that our nervous system is running through to create the end effect of depression, anxiety, PTSD, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when we think about ourselves in terms of this kind of binary, broken, fixed, healthy, unhealthy kind of mindset, we really kind of delete all of that. We ignore what is the process happening, and the fixation becomes, how do I get fixed? How do I fix myself? How do I get better? Right? Not what's happening systemically inside of me, and so you miss out on all kinds of information that can, really help you not only change and heal and solve the problem, but gain way more self-insight, gain understanding into how your own mind works, which is useful then across all kinds of other, areas of your life. And so it's such a deeply important, I think, and valuable reframe to shift from, there are broken people and there are, healthy people, and I'm broken. It's kind of the assumption inside of that kind of conception. If you're inside of this conversation and you're trying to heal something, that's generally how people are thinking of themselves. I'm not going to put that on you, but I'm just going to say that's commonly the conception. To move from that kind of, conception again to what is going on, And so this is point number 2 here. So point number 1 is just, you're not broken. You've just been wired up to work a certain way. Point number 2 that I want to say about this is then, so the question becomes, how are you wired up? So there are different people, obviously, with all kinds of different ways of operating in life, different, temperaments, different modes of being. There are people who see life in all kinds of different ways. We all know this experientially to be true because you meet people, day in, day out who are very different from you, who think differently from you, who emote differently from you, who focus on different things than you do, who share some values with you, but might also have radically different values from you, who have different orientations, who in relationship to the same stimulus will come up with very different responses. People are all wired up very, very differently. Now, one of the important pieces of wisdom that I think is so cool about this presupposition, that people aren't broken, that, it's just understanding how we're wired up. There's no wrong wiring. It's just understanding. One of the cool things about this is that it, not only does it take you, more into a more rich, detailed understanding of yourself and looking at the processes happening inside, which is where you get the leverage to change, but it also gets you to just really start to empathize, which I think is so valuable here. So if you think about it like this, generally speaking, if I were in your shoes, if I held the same beliefs that you do, if I held, if I'd had the same, early life experiences that you've had, if I went through whatever you went through that was contributed to the problem that you had, if I had a similar temperament, if I had a similar set of beliefs to you, I would probably behave and respond to whatever the problem is in the same way, right? And so when you understand that, when you really get that, it empowers a really deep level of empathy for yourself and for those around you to start to understand that there is intelligence behind every issue. There is relatability. There is logic to it. If you unpack a person's problem and you're able to really deeply, radically be able to empathize with their experience and their position and really put yourself in exactly the same perspective, not with your values and your life experiences, but with theirs, you would probably respond in the same way. So when you're working with yourself, then the question becomes, okay, well, what's the whole recipe that's landed me in this experience? What are the assumptions I have about life? What are my early childhood experiences? What are the beliefs? What are the things that I value? What are the what was the modeling, that my parents and, role models around me, demonstrated as a proper way of relating to similar issues like this early on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you start to unpack not only, that you've been wired up a certain way, but what is that wiring? What is the set of concepts and emotions and beliefs and approaches and cultural input and all of that that's in the background inside that wiring that's contributing to you having the end result that is the problem, right? So not only are you not broken, but the problem makes sense. The problem is rational and logical given what you've been through and the situation you've had to deal with. And so again, as an NLP practitioner, as a coach using this, as, someone trained in this, this is such a useful way to understand other people, right? When I'm working with you, I'm thinking about, wow, what would have to be true for me to feel that same way? What are the experiences I would have to have had? And the more I learn about a person and their experience, the more I'm like, oh, yeah, of course, this is the response that you're dealing with and the problem you're dealing with, given the set of inputs that you've had along the way. It makes perfect sense. So consider, again, bringing this back to working with yourself. What if you weren't broken? You just had a set of inputs, and a set of beliefs that brought you to, maybe an unconscious automatic response. But when you unpack that automatic response, it's actually a very logical way of dealing with whatever it is you've been through. How does that change the way you see yourself, the way you see your issue, the way you see this whole experience? The third and final thing I want to leave you with here, last concept, it's actually not from NLP. Okay, so I'm borrowing here, but I feel like this is a really compatible perspective. And this really comes from Buddhism. So I spent many years going deep with studies of different schools of Buddhism and nerding out on Eastern spirituality, both Buddhism and Hinduism. And there is a concept in Buddhism that I think is really profound. And there are different iterations of it in different schools of thought, but the idea is what's called the Buddha nature, or primordial purity, or fundamental purity. And so the understanding in Buddhism, as far as I understand it, is that we are fundamentally at our core pure. And the deepest part of who you are, the most you is fundamentally what they would consider uncorruptible or stainless. It's impossible to actually permanently wound or color or impact that core part of you. And they consider it, in some branches of Buddhism, they call it polishing the mirror of the heart. So they consider that the heart, when it's open and when it's not filled with, all the emotions from trauma and from your past, when you're fully present and your heart is open, if you polish the mirror of your heart, if you allow yourself to get in touch with that essential nature of yourself, it reflects the divinity of life. So that's why they call it a mirror, because it reflects the divinity of everything around you and everything inside you. And so I just want to offer you this as another reiteration of the same idea here. What if fundamentally, at your core, if you stripped it all back, before all the conditioning, before all the, the inputs and the traumas and the struggles and the painful moments and experiences, if you go deeper inside of yourself, what if you're pure, and that purity is untouchable, it's unbreakable, It's cannot be corrupted. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be stained by any experience you've ever had. What if? In my experience, I'll just wrap with this and then we'll call it good. In my experience, this is true. And this is not only something that I've experienced to be true as a cognitive, like an idea I like, or even an idea that's functional and works well in terms of working with other people. This is something I've experienced to be true. So for anyone who's ever done like a very high dose psychedelic session and worked to get past your own conditioning, get past your own filters of mind as best we can, as deeply as possible, going deep into the essential core of your own humanness, of your own you-ness. I've had quite a few experiences like this. I've done a lot of work like this. And what I come up with every single time, and it's not even that I come up with it because it's not conceptualization, it's just what I encounter, what I experience directly, is that the more in touch with that core I am, the more I notice that it's just present and shining and healthy, no matter what I've been through, and radiant and untouchable and unbreakable. I mean, it's that same beauty you see in a newborn, or a baby, where their nature just flows out of them effortlessly, and they're filled with, joy and, wonder and fascination, and they're just fully in themselves. They're fully just vibrantly present and alive and radiating that outward. And I really think that this is true. I think that what the Buddhists are saying here, at a deep nervous system level, that most, 99% of people probably never experience. I think, in my own experience, this is true. This is true, that we are pure at the deepest level, and that cannot be corrupted or, broken or ruined in any way. And so, if we try that on as a concept, as an idea here, I want you to just think about what that means, right? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for life? What does that mean for this work of, self-healing and, doing psychedelics as a means, as a tool, as a, way of getting to the self-healed experience, right? To the end goal that you want to have. I think part of what that means is that, what we're doing here fundamentally is trying to get back in touch with that pure core. That what we're trying to do via psychedelics, via therapeutic processes, is get the conditioning and the bad conceptualizations and clean up the wiring, sure, so that the wiring leads us where we want it to go, so that it's, the output of the system of the wiring is in alignment with our deepest self. So that there's a clean, clear line, right, between our personality and everything we've been conditioned to be, which is useful in the world. Let's be real about that. I'm not saying to not have, all the faculties you have as an adult, as a functioning human being. I'm just saying that when there's a clear line between the pure core of who you are and your behavior, that's going to be a much more healthy, aligned, and fulfilling way to live. So that's the concept I wanted to lay out for you guys here. Again, this is a bit different from my normal videos, but I just want to put that out there. So just to summarize really quick here, and then we will call it good. Concept number one is that you're not broken, that you are wired up to work a certain way. And then concept number two is just simply your job in terms of your own self-healing path is to first understand, how you're wired up, without judgment, without shaming yourself, without, fighting yourself about it, just getting inquisitive about how is it that I'm wired up. And then the third point, which is not NLP, it's my Buddhist kind of, reframe of this, is that you are fundamentally at your core pure, that you are unstainable, unbreakable, and whole and complete at the deepest level. And our job is just to create a clear line of connection to that. So those are the ideas I want to put out for you today. I hope this serves you well. And I really do. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your time, your commentary, your interaction here. It's an honor to do these videos for you guys and to contribute to your lives. So thanks for watching. I hope you're doing well, and there'll be more videos tomorrow. Take care.